Councillor Child, you may begin when you're ready.
Thanks very much, Andrew, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to this council meeting for Yarra Ranges Council. And I'd like to start by saying how proud that I am to have been born on the land of the Wurundjeri, and we respectfully acknowledge the Wurundjeri people as the custodians of this land. We also pay respect to all Aboriginal elders, past and present, who have resided in the area and have been an integral part of the history of this region. As a fifth generation of Yarra Ranges, I also wish to acknowledge the history that shapes our identities, engages us as citizens, creates inclusive communities, as is part of our economic well-being, teaches us to think critically and creatively, inspires leaders, and is the foundation of our future generations. I now like to call for apologies. I have one apology tonight from Councillor Fiona McAllister. I think everyone else is here on screen, our officers and councillors, and I welcome you all. I'd now like to introduce my fellow councillors, and I'll start with our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Joanna Skelton.
Good evening, everyone. And for the record, I can see and hear everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Higgins.
Good evening, everyone. I can hear and see everyone, and hopefully you can hear me for the whole meeting.
Thank you. Councillor David Easton.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. I can see and hear you all clearly.
Thank you. Councillor Tim Heenan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening to everyone. I can confirm that I can hear and see you all.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Councillor Sophie Todoroff.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. And I too can see and hear you all.
Thank you. And Councillor Andrew Fulliger.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mayor, and I can hear and see everyone clearly.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Len Cox.
Yes, and thanks, Mayor. Good evening, everybody, and I too can see and hear all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox, and I too can confirm that I can see and hear all councillors. I'd now like to introduce our executive team. Tammy Rose, Chief Executive Officer.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody.
Ms. Kath McCluskey, Director, Planning, Design and Development.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Andrew Hilson, Director, Corporate Services.
Good evening, everybody.
Ms. Jane Price, Director, Communities.
Thanks, Mayor. Good evening, everybody.
Mr. Mark Lamaris, Director, Environment and Infrastructure.
Good evening, everyone.
And Ms. Jane Cinnamon, Director, Recovery.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you, councillors and officers. We'll now move on to, there's no mayor announcements tonight, and I'd now like to move on to item 4, which is the confirmation of minutes of the council meeting held on the 8th of March 2022. I will move those minutes tonight, but we do have an amendment to those minutes, and at the council meeting on the 22nd of March 2022, Ms. Sue Thompson, resident of Kilsyth, asked a question in relation to Point Out Reserve, Lilydale. What is the park's usage count for the past month? The response that was provided on the night was incorrect, and I'll ask Mr. Vlamaris, the Director of Environment and Infrastructure, to correct that answer.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to Ms. Thompson for her initial question. Initially, I would like to apologise for the incorrect information that was provided to the council at your last meeting. I have been in contact with Ms. Thompson in relation to the incorrect information. Pedestrian counters do in fact exist at Pointer Reserve and have been temporarily installed as part of the evaluation for Council's Art and Soul project. The counters are capturing data on pedestrians accessing Pointer Reserve and also in the nearby streets. The Art and Soul project includes installation of an Indigenous art sculpture at Pointer Reserve and wayfinding signs in the area that will provide cultural and historical information. Data from the 3 counters installed at Pointer Reserve have identified that 1,066 people have accessed the reserve over the past month, and data collected during January identified that 1,338 visitors went to the reserve over a 1-month period. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Vlamaris. With that correction, could I please have a seconder to the confirmation of the minutes with that correction? Seconded, Councillor Heenan. Councillor Heenan, do you wish to speak to the item?
No, I don't, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Councillors, are there any questions to Mr. Vlamaris in regards to that answer? There is not. Councillors, does anyone wish to speak against the motion? There is not. Councillors, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to disclosure of conflicts of interest. Councillors and officers, I'll ask, are there any declarations of conflicts of interest? There is not. Thank you, councillors. Item 6, questions and submissions. Ms. Tammy Rose, do we have any questions?
Thank you, Mayor. We have one question this evening, also from Ms. Thompson. Sue's question: why did council approve the enlarged crossover for 62 Castella Street, Lilydale, to be placed on the south side of the site, and also the drainage pit in the nature strip next to the drive within 1 metre of a tree planted in circa June 1900? Surely council staff have an obligation to do all they can to protect Lilydale's historic street trees. And Mr. Vermalis will respond, Mayor.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you for your question, Ms. Thompson. The driveway crossing for 62 Castella Street was approved as part of a planning application for the redevelopment of the property. In considering the application, Council's planning team sought advice from an arborist in relation to the protection of the English elm tree adjacent to the driveway. Previously, a gravel driveway existed for the property in this location, and this has been upgraded to a concrete driveway that matches the alignment of the existing driveway crossing through the curb and channel. There has been no apparent widening of the driveway compared to historic images in Google Street View. The two drainage pits either side of the driveway existed prior to the works and were not involved in the planning application. The planning permit for the development required tree protection measures, including tree protection fencing and construction method, to be carried out as part of the works. Staff involved in supervising the construction of the crossover checked that excavation works were minimised and the existing footpath was raised to further protect the tree. Other aspects of the planning permit are being further investigated to ensure that works were undertaken appropriately. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vermaas, and thank you, Ms. Rose. Councillors will now move on to the business paper, and we'll start with item 7.1, CT 6965, state purchase contract for the provision of banking and financial services. Councillors, are there any questions to the executive in regards to this item? There is not. We have no submitters wishing to speak to the item. So, councillors, I'll call for motion. Councillor Skelton.
Thank you. I would like to put forward the motion as per the recommendation on page 5 and 6. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Easton. Councillor Skelton.
Thank you. This one reminds me of the procurement policy where I got very excited over something that probably most people don't. So the recommendation here before us tonight, councillors, is obviously relating to who our council uses to provide their banking and financial services. And the recommendation is to continue on using Westpac as a result of a statewide tender process to look for, I guess, the best, what they consider the best value service, providers of that service. So they put forward Westpac, NAB and ANZ. And I must say, when I looked at those, I thought, oh, I know that those banks have come in the firing line for their continued funding of coal and gas projects, which concerns me, and I know would concern a lot of people, especially I've heard from those people over this side in Lister before and after election. So I knew that would be in their minds as well. But on saying that, I think from the information we've got before us, Westpac really does continue to be our best option. And I guess I'd just like to take the chance to say that I will be raising, as the representative for our Eastern Alliance for Greenhouse Action, I'll be raising the fact that we don't have a banking option that doesn't support coal and gas before us as something that we might want to look to improve or advocate for as probably a statewide group, because it boggles my mind that as a government we are bearing all of this financial burden of climate change and climate impacts, and yet we're continuing to sort of be tied to these groups that are not transitioning out of that fast enough, in my humble opinion. So I would like to support the recommendation. I think it's the best value for us right now, but to also highlight that I think we as a council group need to look at alternatives. If we can get some other aspects of our financial services provided by local banks, potentially the community-owned banks, I think that would bring great benefits to our area. So flag an interest in that, and we'll have continued conversations with officers, I'm sure. But I think that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Skelton. Councillor Eastham.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Well, the only things really for me to add to this, I think obviously through the state purchasing contract, there's, a lot of scrutiny considered there, and also I understand that officers at Yarra Ranges as well did a bit of an internal look at the options that were put forward as well, especially when there were some delays early on in the process. So thank you to the officers there. It was identified, I think it's worth calling out, that there could have been some savings if we transitioned, but these savings were going to be very, very minor. I can't remember the exact figure, but quite insignificant. And I guess the disruption to the organisation and the staff hours that would have been necessary to actually do that transition, if you put a dollar value on all of that, clearly Westpac came out as the preference to stay with them. So I'd like to thank the officers that were involved in that scrutiny and looking at the options to ensure that we did put the most viable and financially sensible option on the table. And yes, wholeheartedly support the recommendation as it reads. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Easton. Councillors, is there any councillors wishing to speak against the motion? There is not. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 7.2, Benton Road, Alamo Road, Nangoody Lane, Hillsville, Campbell Road, Crossley Street and Pilmer Road, Hillsville, intent to levy a special charge. Councillors, are there any questions to this item 7.2 to the directors? There's not. There is no one wishing to. Oh yes, Councillor Heenan.
Sorry, Mayor, I jumped the gun.
Oh, okay. There are no submitters wishing to speak to this item, so I'll call for a motion. Councillor Heenan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As per the recommendation on page 11.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Todoroff, Councillor Heenan.
Not much to say, Mayor, except that we're all well aware that we're going through a massive program to upgrade a substantial amount of our roads in Yarra Ranges, and this is just an ongoing process that will be happening over the next few years. So I'll leave it at that, Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Heenan. Councillor Todoroff.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I also agree with that Councillor Heenan's submission there too. And I would note with this particular item that these particular roads have required a bit more extensive work on them as well, which has been generously funded by council and obviously through our federal government Road for the Community initiative too. And these roads are in quite close proximity to the township as well, and actually complement some existing sealed roads in that area as well. So, benefits for the community, for that general amenity environment, stormwater drainage, and, also the benefit of having curb and channel as well. So a really good outcome for community and property owners without too much cost that needs to be bared by them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Todoroff. Councillors, does any councillor wish to speak against this motion? There is not. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 7.3, Alpine Street, Cecil Street, Gembrook Road, Warburton and Baronia Road, of Warburton, I should say, and Baronia Road, parts Sylvan Avenue, Unity Court, Warburton, intent to levy a special charge. There are no submitters for this item. Are there any questions to directors in regards to this item? There is not. Councillors, could I please have a motion? Yeah, Councillor Skelton.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to put forward the motion as per page 58, 59 and 60. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Skelton, and seconder, Councillor Heenan. Councillor Skelton.
Thank you. Yeah, not a great deal to add, but just another, I think, great thing to get done. I noted that it had, you know, a good deal of support from the community. I think for each of those clusters, it was sort of 75% and 79% support from the residents there, which is pretty high levels. And it's such a beautiful and important environmental area. So I'm hopeful that the sealed roads will perhaps reduce runoff and things like that around the Burrung Yarra as well. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan.
Nothing to add, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Any councillors wishing to speak against this motion? If it's not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Now move to item 7.4, lease to Telstra Corporation, 1661 Melba Highway, Dixons Creek. Councillors, are any councillors wishing to ask questions to the executive in regards to this item? There is not. There are no submitters. Councillors, could I please have a motion? Councillor Easton.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation as it reads on page 92 of tonight's papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eastons. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Higgins. Councillor Easton.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mayor. I'll keep this one brief. This is the continuation, or well, a lease was up for renewal for very important infrastructure out in Dixons Creek, so a lease to the Telstra Corporation. This was put out to the community for any submissions as per the Local Government Act to hear from the community if they had any concerns or queries or anything. My understanding is that there were no submissions from the community to speak against this. Obviously, key part of infrastructure for our part of the world. So I would wholeheartedly support the recommendation as it reads. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Easton. Councillor Higgins.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Nothing further to add other than it is a critical infrastructure and we should support it. Absolutely.
Thank you, Councillor Higgins. Councillors, anyone wish to speak against this motion? No. Councillors, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 7.5, Municipal Recovery Plan Update. There are no submitters wishing to speak to this item. And councillors, are there any questions to the executive? There is not. Councillors, could I please have a motion? Councillor Fulliger. Councillor, I might have to unmute, please. That's fine.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a very, very important recovery plan, which covers the ranges, but in particular across the hills and Street and Ward and Monbulk area.
Apologies, councillor. We just need a seconder.
Sorry.
Oh, I am sorry, governance. Could I please have a seconder? Councillor Skelton. Yes, please continue, Councillor Fulliger. Sorry about that. Sorry to interrupt your train.
No problems, Mayor. Yeah, very important plan for Yarra Ranges and across the hills in particular. An enormous amount of work has gone into this plan over a number of months, and I'm delighted with the end result, and I'm very happy to support this motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Fulliger. Councillor Skelton.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you to the officers for the huge body of work that's still going on. I think it's when you drive around, it kind of feels like things have stalled, but actually when you look at what is going on, there's still so many wheels turning and so many parts, I guess, slowly rebuilding or reimagining or just supporting community to move forward, I guess. And shout out to one tiny part of it where it says that we're undergoing discussions with the bus service about a different version of the bus line through the hills. That's something that's been on the vision board for a while. So I hope that, you know, through this storm hardship, some of those cracks that were already there, things, inability to get around, or a disconnection, you know, in the community. I hope that all of this work, and I think it is kind of addressing and building on some of those long-standing things, not only the storm impact itself. So yeah, thank you, and I'd like to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to recap, that this motion has been moved by Councillor Fulliger and seconded by Councillor Skelton. Councillors, does anyone wish to speak against the motion? No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 8, councillor motions. We have none. Item 9, urgent business and items raised through the chair. I believe we have no urgent items, so items to be raised through the chair. Councillor Heenan.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors. I just wanted to bring you up to date at a meeting that I attended. Well, I'll call it a drop-in session that Vic Roads organised for the upgrading through Major Projects Victoria, or investigation, I should say, of the upgrading of York Road through Major Projects Victoria last Wednesday. A source of frustration, I must say. There wasn't a lot of understanding in the community this meeting existed. I did manage to find out from some of the officers that were there representing Major Projects Victoria that they'd sent around 10,000 notices regarding this meeting within the last 24 or 48 hours before the meeting. But that unfortunately was no good to Mount Evelyn people. I stayed for the 2-hour session between 4 and 6 p.m. and unfortunately we only had about 8 or 9 people that turned up, which I can assure you that I was to learn through social media, absolutely frustrated people in Mount Evelyn that wanted to be there. Another meeting has been called for 11 a.m. till 2 p.m. on Tuesday, the 19th of April. And when I had a chance to obviously speak to the officers in front of my community there, I said, well, this is not going to be good enough. You'll have to have a third meeting because, of course, the second meeting will preclude many people are working throughout the day. So I have seen, obviously, correspondence where they're now including a Saturday morning meeting on the 23rd of April, which will be good. Not a lot to say about it. They're obviously wanting to know what the ideas of people are in regard to their investigation between Swansea Road and Monbulk Road, the full length of York Road. And we've all been well aware. I mean, I've lived in Mount Evelyn for nearly 38 years now, of the frustrations that we have because, of course, it's a shortcut for the Warburton corridor for people to go home via York Road and Clegg Road. Vic Roads were asked quite a few times throughout the meeting whether they had thought bubbles on what they wanted to do. And I suppose we are aware that they do have some options, but they weren't keen to talk about them at the meeting. I don't think they were trying to hide anything. They were just keen to hear what the residents had to say. And of course, we all talked about the need to widen, to have 2 lanes going up, but what would that encompass? And certainly, if they were to do any more than a minimum of going up there, it would destroy a substantial amount of the environment. And I think they know they need to take that on board. Nevertheless, they'll be spending the whole of 2022 putting together a plan based on, obviously, feedback they get from the community and the engineering people that are going to be involved. They did have a cut-off date of the 27th of April, Mayor, and I'm frustrated. no doubt I'll be sending some correspondence through to Mr. Vermalis and Miss Rose tomorrow about my thoughts on this, and I won't go too much into it tonight. But we need absolutely more time. And I did say to the consultants that Yarra Ranges would be submitting, but I mean, in what shape or form does that look like? We virtually need to sit down and give that a very, very hard look. And I can imagine what's going through Mr. Vermalis's mind now, because that's not a piece of work, Mayor, that's going to take 5 minutes. And I did say that to Vic Rhodes when I was at the meeting last week. It's an enormous amount of work, because if this investigation leads to the project to go ahead, it will be one of the biggest substantial projects in the area, if not the biggest, depending on what they're going to do. So it's a very serious concern. Mandeville people have been frustrated for many years by the traffic movements and the gridlock that we have for a certain amount of time in the afternoon. Nevertheless, we need to work with Vic Rhodes, of course, to see this through, and hopefully there'll be an enormous input that they will take on board from the community. So I'll leave it at that at the moment, and you'll certainly be hearing a lot more from me. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Councillor Heenan, and credit to you for keep connecting into this early stage in the process and bringing your community along on that journey. For someone that actually frequents that section of road many times, yeah, it is frustrating, and I'm probably in a way a positive out of this is at least that looks as though the Department of Roads is putting a lens over it, but I think that our community and us as a council should play an important part in that as well. So thanks very much for raising that tonight, Councillor Heenan.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any other items to be raised through the chair, councillors? There is not. Thank you. We have no petitions. We have no documents for signing and sealing. Informal meetings of councillors, 10th of March, 15th of March twice, and the 16th of March. Could I have a motion in regards to those informal meetings of council, that those records of informal meetings of council, copies of which are attached to the report, be received and noted? Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Cox, seconded Councillor Heenan. Councillor Cox.
Nothing to say to it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Heenan.
Nothing to say, Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. No questions to the executive. Any councillors wishing to speak against the motion? There's not. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Reports from delegates, councillors. I'll call for any reports from delegates. Councillor Fulliger, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I had the pleasure of recently chairing on behalf of Councillor Skelton the SEAC, or Sustainability Environment Advisory Committee, last Thursday. Very well represented, 17 or 18 were in attendance. There were several brief presentations and discussions around a number of things, including Council's new housing strategy and how it may impact character of neighbourhoods. We talked about the energy and energy and solar update, and discussed the changing tariff landscape which may affect the viability of solar farms. We also outlined our strong support for VECO, which is the Victorian Electricity Collaboration, which is a combination of 46 councils with renewable energy, 100% renewable energy, which is a great organisation to be part of. And we talked about Yarra Ranger Council's solar plan generally, and our work on resilient buildings, and our desire to install solar panels on many more buildings. Finally, the Biodiversity Subcommittee is very close to finalising its recommendations for Council's biodiversity plan. A very active and passionate group, as you can understand, and yeah, it was a pleasure to be there. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Fulliger. Any other items? Councillor Heenan, then Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mayor. And first of all, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Councillor Fulliger in my absence as Deputy to Councillor Skelton, I was unable to chair that, and at a very late time in the afternoon, Councillor Fuller stood in. So I'm very appreciative of you doing that. Thank you. Councillors, I would like to say that I attended with the Mayor the opening of the new accommodation residence for the monks at the Buddhist temple in Mount Evelyn Saturday week ago. It was an interesting morning, and the Mayor gave me the honour, and I'm very thankful of speaking on behalf of Council with dignitaries there in attendance. And it was just a very joyous occasion. It was fairly cold in the morning, and we felt for some of the costumes that were on some of the dancers, and the beautifully clad costumes that some of the people that had on there. But it was, I'm told, beamed across to other countries in the world, and certainly it was an occasion that you had to be there to experience. Warm and friendly people. They welcomed us with open arms, and as the morning went on, and it was a fairly long morning, councillors, I think it was 3.5 hours of speeches and commemoration, but it's a beautiful residence, and I believe that international monks will be able to come there and teach people the Buddhist way, and certainly integrate into the community, and certainly the local community is very appreciative and stands behind the Buddhist monks. Since they have come on board there, they've shown nothing but kindness and understanding, and a very welcoming, open arms to everybody in the community. So it was a great day, and I'm honoured that the Mayor allowed me to speak on his behalf for the whole of Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Yes, it was a very moving morning, and yeah, the weather wasn't kind, but I think that really showed how diverse our community is when you see a group of people like that, and kind and so welcoming. And thanks very much, Councillor Heenan. Councillor Cox.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And on Saturday the 2nd, with you, Councillor Heenan and Councillor McAllister, I attended a memorial service for ex-councillor Di Moore. Di, unfortunately, passed away last December up in Ballarat, and a lot of people from this area couldn't get to that service, and so some friends of hers held this memorial service at Healesville on the 2nd of April. Now, for anyone who doesn't know Di Moore, she was one of the initial councillors with Yarra Ranges back in 1997. She'd had a history for a few years with Healesville Council before that, and I have to say she was one of the more impressive councillors I've ever served with. She was much loved by many people in that area, and look, she was adventurous. She did so many different things, and I confess she was a friend of mine, so I may be biased, but she was one of the most impressive people I've known in my lifetime. And the memorial service was just lovely. There was something like, I don't know, Mr. Mayor, 20 or 30 people spoke about her, and everybody said good things about her, and it was just a very pleasant service. And if she was alive, she would have enjoyed it immensely. She really would have. And look, I think that's all needs to be said, Mayor, but it was a very good afternoon, and it was good to remember somebody like that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cox, and it certainly was. It was a great celebration, and you spoke so well of your friend. Thank you. Councillor Easton.
Thank you very much, Mayor. For me, I represented Yarra Ranges last night as the council representative on the board of Barringer, and I just wanted to sort of flag that we know how much the arts industry got impacted during lockdowns and the last couple of years, but it was incredible to hear how the communities rallied behind Barringer, and just, I guess it really highlighted the importance of what a cultural centre like Barringer plays, the part it plays within our community. One of the key bits of, I guess, information to share is that Barringer is one of the Vic Health's new Big Connect partners. So that's part of their future healthy work. So Barringer is going to be partnering with them to create estimated about 100,000 different social connection opportunities for young people in the area to feel included and empowered in their neighbourhoods and communities, which is just incredible. So that's just a bit of an insight. It's a really exciting bit of news that Barringer did share earlier. But yeah, it's just inspiring to see what some of our organisations in the area are doing. And, I'm fortunate enough to have been elected to represent Yarra Ranges on that board. So thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Eastham. And I can't emphasise enough how much we value Barringer. I was over there the other week, and to walk through some of those displays they've got there at the moment, exhibitions, it's just a credit to the executive and the board. And just keep up the great work. And I'm so pleased that you're representing Councillor Eastham. Any other items, councillors, delegates, reports? No, there's not. Item 14, confidential items. We have none. Item 15, the next date for our next council meeting is Tuesday, the 26th of April, 2022 at 7 p.m. That concludes tonight's council meeting. I'd like to thank you all that have attended online. I can't thank you enough for joining in. Through COVID, we've seen great uptake in people wanting to join the council meeting remotely. When we move into the new building, we'll be continuing to do this, because I think this, if it's a positive that comes out of COVID, this is one of them. So thank you for your attendance tonight. Thank you to my fellow councillors, and thank you to the executive team. Good night, everyone.